Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we bring you the latest news, information and analysis on what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now today I want to talk about the US ban on Russian nuclear fuel and how, in my opinion, it's actually only for show. Now, the United States has banned the importing of coal, oil and gas from Russia 2 years ago. It did, however, continue to purchase Russian nuclear fuel. Now, the US Congress has decided to target the Russian nuclear fuel sector with sanctions. However, if you look at the bill and the sanctions, this ban is designed in such a way it will have no real impact on the market other than to affect prices. Now, the legislation is going into effect in 90 days and will remain in place until 2040. Now, so what are the real reasons for the bill, and why will the United States continue to have the ability to buy Russian nuclear fuel? Well, the new law doesn't ban Russian nuclear fuel completely, but has numerous get-out clauses that allow for exceptions to the sanctions, and these will remain in place until January 2028. Now, the current quotas for fuel already ordered will be fulfilled over the next 4 years. Now that's 4 more years. Now, during this period, the US Department of Energy, in agreement with the US Department of State and the US Department of Commerce, will be able to issue permits for the importation of from Russia of nuclear fuel, if there are no other sources of supply, or if the importation of the Russian fuel meets US national interests. Now, the US company Centrus Energy, which is formerly USEC, which is a partner of 10X, which is Techno Export, a subsidiary of Rosatom, has already stated that it will be appealing for such a permit. Now, the current quotas for which they remain in place until 2028 are relatively generous. I mean, they allow for approximately 460 to 470,000 tonnes of uranium to be imported annually. Now, to put that figure into context, in 2020, amid the crisis caused by COVID, which reduced the demand for energy, the United States imported 453,000 tonnes of uranium. In 2022, 588,000 tonnes of Russian uranium were imported. And in 2023, supplies increased to a record 702,000 tonnes. So this can be attributed to an effort to prepare for a potential ban on the importation of uranium from Russia. I mean, the United States companies purchased the fuel for their future use. Now, the US Department of Energy reports that Rosatom supplies enriched uranium used as a nuclear fuel feedstock to more than 90 commercial reactors in the UK and the US, making it the #1 foreign supplier to the US. Now, what you have to understand is that the Russian nuclear industry is one of the most advanced in the world, and it's extremely competitive. I mean, so much so that the Americans are unable to compete with it effectively, which is why they're introducing the ban. I mean, it's challenging for US companies to compete internationally, and as soon as when the situation internationally becomes challenging for them, they're not afraid to take action, including measures that could potentially pervert, distort and undermine all aspects of international trade standards, says the Russian presidential press secretary Dmitry Peskov. Now, at one time during the Cold War, the United States and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics were among the world's leading uranium mining nations. However, the US has since fallen to 15th place in terms of its own uranium production, and all its raw materials are actually imported. In contrast, Russia has become one of the global leaders in the nuclear industry, with a strong presence in the fuel production. Now, according to the US, Russia controls 50% of the world's nuclear enrichment capacity, and about 25% of the fuel used in US reactors come from contracts with Russian suppliers. Now, how did this happen? Well, the United States has become an outsider in the nuclear industry due to what it's done itself, its own actions. The main reason for the signing of the HEU-LEU, which is High Enriched Uranium, Low Enriched Uranium Agreement, in February 1993, and then later became a contract. This agreement between Russia and the United States was about the processing of highly enriched weapons-grade uranium into low-enriched uranium, which is used as a fuel for US nuclear plants. Now, at the time, this contract was not entirely beneficial to Russia, as the price of the Russian nuclear fuel was relatively low. However, what it did lead to was the decline of the uranium enrichment industry in the United States, as American nuclear power plants began to purchase Russian cheap nuclear fuel, which resulted in the bankruptcy of the US-owned plants. Now, currently in the US, there's only one uranium enrichment plant operational, and that's in the state of New Mexico, and it belongs to actually a European consortium called Urenco. Shareholders are the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands. Now, it only produces a third of the USA's annual needs, and as a result, the United States is forced to import a significant portion of the reactor-ready fuel from other parts of the world. Now, two main exporters are Urenco, which supplies the fuel from its European plants, and Russia's Rosatom. Now, the issue here is that there's no alternative suppliers to those two, and the European producers are unable to increase their fuel production volumes to replace the significant volumes if the Russian nuclear fuel is stopped from being imported. Now, so this is why the ban imposed by the United States is sort of being in effect for a period of 4 years, though in practice it's not actually happening because the importation of Russian nuclear fuel will continue. Now, what this means is the United States plan to use this time to expand its nuclear fuel production capacity. I mean, over the last 2 years, the United States has already made efforts to address the issue of sanctions against nuclear fuel from Russia. I mean, in October 2023, Centrus Energy started uranium enrichment operations at the US centrifuge plant in Pickerington, Ohio. Now, the United States is actually seeking to restore its domestic uranium industry, and that requires serious investment. Now, in order to get this investment in funding, it was necessary to get Congress to pass this law. Now, when they pass this law, Congress now has approved $2.7 billion for the US uranium industry in 2024. And that's contingent on the US administration imposing restrictions on the importation of Russian uranium. So that was the reason behind this. But with a delay of up to 4 years, the US States is heavily dependent on Russian fuel, and a full ban would have significantly impacted their electricity market. Now, the process of reviving uranium enrichment in the US is going to be a slow and costly one. I mean, it is possible that they might just want to raise electricity prices in the US as a necessary measure to support the development of their internal electricity capacities, according to Alexander Timofeyev, who's a professor of informatics at the Russian Economic University. Now, the imposition of sanctions on Russian fuel could result in an increase in prices, and theoretically that might make uranium, American enriched uranium, more competitive in the domestic market. I mean, their enrichment technology is several times more expensive than the Russian way of doing things, according to Sergei Grushin, who's the managing director of the NRA rating service. But however, even if the US is able to resume its domestic enrichment, it's unlikely to be able to make it cost competitive with the Russian enriched uranium. And I mean, despite the copying of Russian technology by the European and Iranian companies, Russian material remains the most cost effective. So the United States has 2 old uranium enrichment plants that were abandoned in the 2010s, which is now looking to restore and address this. They'll have to look for uranium concentrate on the market. Now, this also presents a serious challenge. because there's no real excess concentrate available on the market. I mean, it seems likely that the US will seek to establish ties with Uzbekistan as a major uranium producer, as well as Kazakhstan, which is probably why certain American officials were visiting those parts of Central Asia recently. Now, the challenge for them is Uzbekistan has a long-standing relationship with Russia's Rosatom, and even if we assume that the US will find uranium concentrate on the market, revive the two enterprises and maintain the plant in New Mexico, it still means they'll only be able to make up about 70% of the demand for fuel. So it's not ever going to be possible to eliminate imports entirely. Furthermore, this process is actually going to take a lot more than 4 years, and it's probably going to be nearer to 7 to 10. So, in theory, the US could substitute Russian fuel with European fuel. However, that's not a straightforward process. The European Union is unable to increase its fuel production due to the same key issue with raw materials. So there's no additional uranium concentrate. So, if the US succeeds in persuading the Europeans to provide the fuel, then the Europeans will be forced to buy fuel from Russia that the Americans didn't want to power their plants. So, to replace supplies from Russia, the United States will have to purchase European uranium, and the Europeans will be forced to supply byproducts from Russia. And shutting down their power plants is just not an option for them. So, and I mean, what you have to understand, there's no other major exporters on the market that are comparable with Russia. Russia has, 50% of the enrichment capacity and low enrichment costs. So, the only thing that's happening now is the rise in prices, and the demand for uranium is increasing, and all the global consumption of nuclear fuel is set to rise, and everybody's just waiting for this trend to continue. I mean, the current shortage of uranium concentrate is going to create some interesting market dynamics, and the price of uranium will continue to be significantly high. So, all in all, it's all looking like it's going to be an interesting time for Rosatom, Russia, the US, and its sham sanctions on Russia's nuclear fuel. And let's see, with nuclear energy now being recognized as a major contributor to the energy transition in Europe, then the Americans' ability to take nuclear fuel from Europe is actually going to be, I think, a bit difficult. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to having a chat with you further about these and other issues. Now, do like and subscribe. Do visit the website. We've got plenty of articles about nuclear and all the other various things that are happening in the world of the BRICS, and I look forward to being with you again. So SCO-BRICSinsight.com, and do like and subscribe, do comment, and I'll get back to you as many of you as I can. Thank you.